Welcome to War Thunder, and welcome aboard the Phantom FG.1. This is one of two Phantoms in the British air tree, both currently sitting at the maximum battle rating of 10.7. The British Phantoms are similar enough that I'd say they have exactly the same playstyle in the current meta. Both the FG.1 and the FGR2 are essentially upgraded F4C airframes, with extremely powerful Rolls-Royce Spey turbofans that give these planes so much thrust that they are the fastest accelerating aircraft from a standstill in the entire game, despite their chunky appearance. Being a naval fighter, the FG.1 also has a landing hook and an extra long nose wheel, but those don't really affect its flight performance. In terms of its performance in War Thunder, the Phantom FG.1 is basically just a really fast F4C, which means it's actually quite clumsy for a top-tier jet, maybe even the clumsiest. You certainly won't be outmaneuvering your opponents very often in this thing. Thankfully, however, I think the FG.1's weapon systems are perfectly suited for the hit-and-run playstyle required by its airframe. In terms of payload options, the FG.1 is decked out. It gets flares and chaff countermeasures, and can carry both infrared and semi-active radar homing missiles in the form of AIM-9D Sidewinders and AIM-7E Sparrows, respectively. Now, I have heard complaints about how the AIM-9D is inferior to the AIM-9Js and AIM-9Ps that other top-tier jets carry because it's not as nimble, but I think that misses the point of the AIM-9D. This missile has insane range. The rocket burns for much longer than any other Sidewinder variant currently in the game, so much so that you can actually hit people up to 5 kilometers away if they're not paying attention. The tracking algorithm on board is also a bit different from the later Sidewinder variants as well. The AIM-9D noticeably overleads the target, which means it's very easy to dodge in close quarters if you just turn one way and then turn the other, but at longer ranges I find that the overleading actually means the missile doesn't need to turn quite as sharply to stay on target if the target tries to evade. So, despite its 16G overload, the AIM-9D is still extremely difficult to dodge. All of this means that the AIM-9D is the perfect mid-range sniping tool, allowing you to get the jump on enemies that don't even consider you a threat because they're used to countering shorter range IR missiles. Of course, it wouldn't be a proper Phantom if it couldn't carry Sparrows as well as Sidewinders. Despite being the same missile, the Sparrows on the British Phantoms are more effective than the Sparrows on the American Phantoms because the British Phantoms have a better radar system. The radar on the FG.1 is a pulse Doppler radar, which has what is called look-down, shoot-down capability, meaning that it can maintain a radar lock on a target even when that target is below you and silhouetted against the ground. For a while, this feature was not implemented in War Thunder. However, now there is a noticeable difference in the locking capabilities of the British Phantoms. You can acquire and maintain a radar lock much closer to the ground and at much lower angles than you can in American Phantoms, and that means you can use the Sparrows a lot more aggressively, such as that head-on that you saw in the intro. Granted, the Sparrows are still super clunky and difficult to use, especially because they don't start tracking until after a kilometer of flight. But with the Pulse Doppler radar, they're at least a viable option in situations that aren't just high-altitude head-ons. Just don't try to pull any deflection shots with them, because they'll lose sight of the target before they even start tracking. Finally, on top of all these fancy missiles and countermeasures, the Phantom FG-1 also gets the old faithful 20mm Vulcan in the form of a giant gun pod with 1,200 rounds of ammunition. Because of its placement in the belly of the plane, you'll have to learn to compensate a bit, especially in head-ons, but the Vulcan is very well suited for top-tier combat. I did mention in my T2 video that I didn't like the Vulcan because of its spool-up time, but since then I've actually changed my mind. The high velocity and high fire density of the 20mm rounds means they're extremely effective at both head-on engagements and high-angle deflection shooting, both of which you'll be seeing a lot of while playing the Phantom. With 1,200 rounds, you can also certainly afford to spray a little, and sometimes you can pull miracles getting cheeky shots that you never even expected to hit. All in all, the Phantom FG-1 is a very heavy bird. I like to think of it as less of a fighter and more of a delivery man, with a long range and an inventory full of explosive goodies in need of a home. It's certainly not the most effective top-tier jet in every situation, but with a bit of patience, it can perform. Thanks for dropping by, and I'll see you in the skies.